Hi, everybody. Mike Beer here, taking a look at the first of two Stallion Series races for the New York Breds on Sunday, Father's Day, at Belmont Park. The first division of the Stallion Series. These are both races for 3-year-olds with $150,000 purses. They are both scheduled for 7 furlongs on the Widener. The first division, the spectacular bid division, is for the Colts and Geldings, 8-horse field. Here's your field right now. You can see led by 2 horses that are going to take the bulk of the money in this race, and they're going to take a ton of beating as well. The number 2, Dakota Gold, is your 2-to-1 morning line favorite. He is making his 3-year-old debut here, last seen at the Breeders' Cup, actually winding up going off the favorite in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf back there at Del Mar on November 5th, and running an okay 5th that day. That was a really tough spot for him. He ran fine in that race. He's your 2-to-1 morning line favorite as he comes back off the layoff. And at 5-2, a horse who I think could vie for favoritism in here is the number 8, Surprise Boss. Surprise Boss has a couple of things going for him. Not only is he undefeated on turf, not only does he have recency on Dakota Gold with a couple of recent turf races, but he's faster than that horse, at least at this point. Either one of the Beyer speed figures earned by Surprise Boss in his last 2 starts just make him the fastest horse in this race. He's a horse who is going to have a big say in the outcome here. He does have to get 7 furlongs for the first time, but he's in good form, and he's never lost on the grass. The other horses really have their work cut out for them. There are a couple of other, I think, interesting horses in this race, but man, are they going to have to up their game if they're going to go with the 2 favorites here in the spectacular bid division of this Stallion Series. Let's start off by looking at the Timeform US Pace Projector for the race. There's speed in here. Certainly both of the favorites have enough speed to be forward. Pace Projector does have the number 2, Dakota Gold, sort of right up there close at the pace call. They have the number 8, Surprise Boss, you see there, sort of sitting a little bit off of it in a pretty good position in 4th, and that's certainly possible. Surprise Boss did win his most recent start from just off the pace, but he's also fast. He has speed. He wired a field 2 starts back to win his N1X allowance condition. So he'll be forward, but being drawn on the outside certainly gives his rider some options. And he's a horse who, I suppose they could be concerned about the 7 furlongs, so maybe they won't be on an all-out send here. Either way, he's going to be forward. Pace Projector has number 1, buck or 2 out there on an early lead in this race. That's certainly possible. Buck or 2 is 12-to-1 on the morning line in this race. He's a maiden on the way into the year. He's already run 5 times. He hasn't won any of those races. He's also, he's just better than that. He's a horse who, while he hasn't won a race yet, he's actually run pretty well several times. I thought he ran, perfectly fine in each of his final 2 starts last year. As a 2-year-old, races where, he was right up close to the pace in the final one of those over a course with a little bit of give in it, but he did get wired that day and had to settle for second. His second career start where he made a run from just off the pace. I thought he ran fine in that race too. I didn't mind this horse at all as a 2-year-old. He's come back for 2 starts now at 3, Lasix and blinkers on for both of those races. Of course, he cannot run with Lasix in this race on Sunday. But I just think he's improved, and maybe improved more than it appears on paper, because he wasn't really that close at the end of either of those races. But man, both of his starts so far this year have come in races that had really fast paces. The first of those, he was up there pushing it the entire way. He wound up getting tired around about the 16th pole of that race and got out finished as the eventual winner, Citizen K, came from way out of it to get up. And then in his most recent start, 7 furlongs, yielding turf right here at Belmont Park. He was, off of that pace early, but he was pretty close to it, relatively speaking, and they were flying early in that race. The winner, Marinara Sauce, who's also back in here, came from way, I think he was like 20 lengths out of it up the backstretch. He came from way, way back to win it as the leaders all got tired, including Buck or 2, but he had a reason to get tired in that race. That was a really fast pace. I think this horse has actually improved a little bit as a 3-year-old, even if it doesn't appear so on paper, and I don't think he's impossible in this race. It's obviously a tough spot for him. But I think he's a horse at 12-to-1 you could try to get in there somewhere, because I don't think he's bad. Number 2 is your morning line favorite, Dakota Gold. Listen, if he comes back and he's ready off the layoff, and, Danny Gargan's trainer stats with layoffs like this suggest that he's going to come back ready off the layoff. These horses tend to win, and they win a lot. Dakota Gold's just a nice horse. He was a good 2-year-old. He's never run against New York bred competition, even though he debuted in New York last summer at Saratoga in a race that was rained off the turf. That was an open maiden race, and he won that race pretty easily. Did not break great in there, but he recovered. He kept up close to the pace, and he was much the best in there. They came back, stretched him out on turf over at Monmouth Park, a 2-turn mile in the Now Stakes. We'll look at the stretch run of that race right now. Again, didn't break sharp from the gate in here, but managed to get himself forward in there, settled off the pace in about mid-pack, and he just came to the outside through the stretch. And you can just see he got on top of the leaders pretty easily, and then he was just suddenly in front mid-stretch. Just got away from that field. A very easy win for him. He came back for one final start as a 2-year-old. That was at the Breeders' Cup out at Del Mar, the Grade 1 juvenile turf. He wound up going favored. One half of the Godolphin entry, the Godolphin entry was favored there. One half scratched. Modern Games was then mistakenly scratched. He wound up being allowed to run and winning the race in a pretty big fiasco out there. But Dakota Gold wound up post-time favorite. He ran fine. He wasn't good enough to win that race. He did not embarrass himself. He didn't have a big excuse in finishing 5th, beaten just about 2 lengths in there, but he ran fine in that race. I think it showed that he's, a quality horse. He's got, plenty of talent. He's off the layoff here. Again, for a guy who has really good layoff numbers. And he's got, I think the right running style for this race, and the 7 furlongs is just no problem. There's just a lot to like about Dakota Gold. We'll see if he is indeed ready off the layoff, because if he is, he's going to be pretty hard for this field to beat. Maceda's number 3. He's the longer price. I guess you would call him, one of the outsiders in here that I would maybe try to get in there somewhere. I could try to talk myself into this horse on top in this race. Man, I liked all 3 of his starts last year as a 2-year-old, all 3 of his turf starts as a 2-year-old. I thought he ran well in all of them, including the maiden win, going a mile and a 16th. They ran him in the Central Park against Open Company, and he ran well again against a good field to finish 3rd, beating a length. I just don't love his 2 starts so far this year. He hasn't been terrible, but he hasn't been great in them. The Woodhaven, I guess you could just say, was a tough spot off the layoff. But I still thought he was a fit in that race, and he just didn't run that well. They came back most recently on May 13th in an N1X allowance race back in with New York Breds. And I just didn't really see his excuse that day. It was a really fast pace in front of him. They just settled him back off of that fast pace. He had the jump on the 1-2 finishers in there through the stretch, and he just got outfinished by them. He was bothered maybe a little bit in the stretch of that race with the runner-up there, Mr. Kringle, right to his outside. I still didn't think it was any kind of an excuse for Maceda. And I just don't think the 2 horses that ran 1-2 that outfinished him, they're older horses. I just don't think either one of them's that good. And I just didn't love that loss from Maceda. He's got blinkers on for this. They're going to cut him back to 7, which I think works for him. I like his running style for this race. There are things to like about this horse. And I do think, I feel like I could give him one more chance at the right kind of price. This is not an easy race for him, though, in the face of the 2 favorites. The number 4, One Time Willard. He's just an outsider in here, 15-1 on the line. He's making his turf debut here. He broke his maiden off of a pretty long layoff, 2 starts back. His 3-year-old debut going 5.5 at Monmouth. Looked good winning that race. Won very easily. 75 Beyer speed figure is rock solid. They stretched him all the way out around 2 turns for his most recent start about 3 weeks after that, and he just didn't run well in there. He contested the pace. He got tired. Maybe the distance did him in. He was very heavily favored there. And it wasn't a good performance. They're going to cut him back to 7, and they're going to switch him over to turf here with Louis Saez taking them out. He just doesn't really have a lot of turf pedigree, so it's hard to project him being better on this surface than he is on dirt, and he's going to have to be a lot better on this surface to win this race. Marinara Sauce is the 5. He's just a horse that I'm going to have to be against in this race. Only 1 start so far. It's the race that we already talked about, the Bucker 2 race, where the pace was just wicked, going 7 furlongs over yielding ground, and Marinara Sauce got away from the gate last. He was completely outrun as they blazed away in front of him, and then he came running down the outside in the very late stages of that race, and he just got up. The runner-up in there, Dream Point, another horse who's had a bunch of chances, who was a big price in there. He was also making a big run from out of it, and they ran 1-2 in a photo. I just feel like this horse took advantage in that race. It doesn't mean he's not any good. He has a little pedigree behind him, but he's trained by Chad Brown, and there's just no way that he's going to be the kind of price that he probably needs to be if you were going to bet him seriously in this race. I suppose he could win. He's a horse that I'm against in here. Number 6 is Mo Danson. Turf debut for this horse. Doesn't have a lot of pedigree to back him up. His only win so far, a maiden claimer, first time out on the main track going a mile. He ran pretty well winning that race. He was the only first-time starter in that field. And he was, a pretty easy winner. Since then, they've run him twice against better horses, including the Times Square division of this Stallion Series, that at 6.5 on the dirt. He's just no match either time for the better dirt horses. Now he's going to try some better turf horses, and he's not really bred to be better on this surface. I thought he was hard to make. Barrel of Quests is a turf winner. 1 start as a 2-year-old, that going a mile and a 16th on the turf over at Aqueduct. He just got tired in that race, close to the pace. Really couldn't reach contention around the final turn and got really tired in there. So that wasn't a good performance. And then they brought him back on dirt, and he sort of steadily improved earlier this year through racing. Back to turf, 2 starts back, and he got the maiden win, keeping right up close to the pace. And he got the maiden win there with a pretty solid figure of 76. That wasn't a bad performance. They've come back since then to run him in an N1X, another race that's that fast-paced race that he was in most recently, that Maseta was also in, and Barrel of Quest just really wasn't competitive in there. This race probably won't be run like that, and the cutback could actually help this horse. But man, this is a tough spot for him. His race 2 starts back was pretty good though. He's not impossible in this race, and it'll probably be a fair price. Surprise Boss is the 8. He's the second choice on the morning line. He could be favored. If not, he's going to take his share of money in here. And there's just a lot to like about Surprise Boss. He's undefeated on turf so far. He's run 9 times, only 3 of those races on turf, and he's won all of them. It's the only surfing he's ever won on. He's been good in all of those races too. Once as a 2-year-old, wiring a field of maidens at Saratoga last summer, and they finally came back to the grass with him for his last 2 starts. 2 starts back, just right to the top with the best speed. And won that race really easily with a 93 Beyer speed figure, a race that was has since been flattered by the runner-up Deep Cover, who came back to win his next start with an 88. So, he ran really well that day. He came back for this race. This is his most recent start on June 4th, and we'll take a look at the replay. He did it a different way here, which I like. He sat off the pace a little bit in this race because he showed speed from the gate, but other horses went to his inside, and so he was content to just back off it. He sat third. He came back for them again around the turn, and he just stayed. I like how gamely he stayed in this race to finally wear down Swashbuckle at the end. I don't think Swashbuckle's a great horse, but this was a game performance from Surprise Boss to wear that horse down and win with an 88 Beyer. He is fastest on the way in. He's got great positional speed from the outside post. He's undefeated on the turf. There's a lot to like about this horse. The main question is, can he get 7 furlongs? Because it's a big difference between 6 and 7 in these turf races at Belmont Park. If he can get the 7, he's a handful in here, and I don't think that's impossible. But as we go to the picks now, I am going to take Dakota Gold on top in this race. I just feel like there's a chance that this horse is pretty good. His Breeders' Cup was fine. Gargan's numbers off the layoffs, make you feel like you don't really have to worry about that too much. I think he's going to show up and run his race. And if he shows up and runs his race, especially at 7 furlongs, I think it could be an advantage for him. The other horse for me is the number 3, Maseta. We'll see how big a price he winds up being. I would love to give him one more chance in here, but he's got his hands full with the 2 and the 8 in this race, the 2 favorites in here. It's the first of 2 Stallion Series races on Sunday at Belmont Park. This one is the spectacular bid. It's race number 4. The approximate post time is 2:34 Eastern Time. Good luck.